The cranberry sauce still wore the shape of its can when my father looked me in the eye on Christmas night and told me I was a burden. Not a discussion, not a conversation. Just a sentence dropped like a stone into cold water. I was 28 years old. I'd been paying their electric bill for 6 years. The water, the internet, even the wine he was holding. And in that moment, with dry ham on my plate and silence pressing against my ribs, I realized something. I hadn't been part of this family in a long time. I'd just been funding it. The house smelled like boxed mashed potatoes and regret. No music played. The heater clicked and wheezed in the corner like it was barely holding on, same as everything else in that place. I slid my coat off and hung it on the crooked hook by the door, the one that had been tilted since I was 16. Nobody ever fixed it. Just like the sagging cabinet door in the kitchen or the light fixture in the living room that leaned to one side, everything in that house was tired of holding itself up. Mom was pouring water into 3 mismatched glasses. She didn't look up when I walked in, just pushed one toward an empty plate and moved on. Her sweater was festive, bright red with little snowflakes stitched across the chest, but her face didn't match. The smile she gave me was thin and polite, like a cashier at the end of a long shift. Dad was already seated at the head of the table, turning his wineglass slowly between his fingers. The wine was cheap. It always was, warm and sour. He didn't drink it for the taste. He just needed something to do with his hands. Jordan sat across from him, hunched over his phone, thumbs moving fast. He glanced up when I walked in, made brief eye contact, then looked back down like I was part of the furniture. I took my usual seat next to the pantry door. The chair creaked when I pulled it out. Nobody said anything. Nobody prayed. We never really did. We just filled our plates and kept our thoughts buried where they belonged. I reached for the ham. It was dry, pale around the edges. I served myself anyway. Halfway through my first bite, Dad cleared his throat. Then he said it. "You're a burden, Marissa. It's time you moved out." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even look directly at me. Just said it like he was reading off a to-do list, like the words had been sitting on his tongue for weeks, and tonight the wine finally gave them permission to crawl out. I didn't move. Neither did anyone else. Jordan froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. Mom let out a small breath, almost a laugh but not quite, and said, "Oh, Gerald." But the words didn't go anywhere. They just dissolved into the air. The heater clicked again. My potatoes were already cold. I looked down at them and wondered, not for the first time, how long I'd been setting the table for people who had no intention of feeding me back. I didn't respond right away. I just picked up the knife and spread a thin layer of butter across the dinner roll in front of me. It crumbled anyway, the kind that always tasted like freezer burn no matter how long you warmed it. Mom adjusted her napkin. Jordan looked like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the edge of it. I didn't give them time. "I'm not here because I can't afford rent," I said quietly. "I've been covering the utilities, the grocery bills, that bottle you're drinking." Dad's eyes stayed on his plate. The wine glass circled again in his hand. "Doesn't matter," he said. "It's still my house." That part was true. His name was on the deed, but the roof had been held up by other things for a long time. Things like emergency paychecks, bounced loan payments I quietly covered, the credit card I paid off last August without a word. And in that moment, staring at the cranberry sauce still shaped like a can, I realized something I should have known years ago. I wasn't invisible because they didn't see me. I was invisible because it was easier that way. The night the water heater broke, I worked a double shift at the hospital to replace it. February, when Mom's car stalled on the highway during a snowstorm, I walked 3 miles to the pharmacy to pick up Dad's heart medication because nobody else could leave work. When Jordan couldn't afford his student fees in the spring, I skipped my own therapy appointment and wired him the balance. He never said thank you, just texted me a thumbs-up emoji and went back to his life. None of those moments were dramatic. No speeches, no tears. Just quiet trades of my time, my money, my needs for theirs. Nobody asked for proof, and nobody remembered them either. I kept track once, 6 years, 7 months, and 4 days of making sure the lights stayed on, And not once did anyone notice the power was coming from me. I bought those light bulbs, changed them too. But somehow, the room always felt dim. I glanced around at the table that Christmas night, really looked at it for the first time in years. There wasn't a single framed photo on the walls that included me after high school. Baby pictures of Jordan were everywhere. A glossy wedding portrait from their vow renewal hung above the couch. Even a shot of Dad shaking hands with the HOA president at some neighborhood barbecue made it onto the mantel. But me? I'd been airbrushed out in real time, deleted softly, year by year. No fights, no arguments, just edits. Mom finally looked at me, but it wasn't a look of apology. It was relief, like a hard decision had finally made itself. "You've got a good job," she said. "You'll land on your feet." That was the closest thing to kindness I was going to get. I stood up slowly, folded my napkin into a perfect square, and laid it beside my plate. Dad leaned back in his chair like he'd been waiting for this moment. Maybe he had. Maybe that sentence had been sitting at the back of his throat for years, just waiting until I'd done enough to make my absence feel like a gift. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't pack with urgency or spite. I moved the way fog lifts, quiet and unnoticed, gone before anyone's sure it was ever there. I drove back to the apartment I'd never told them I kept, a small one-bedroom above an old bakery on Maple Street where the hallway always smelled like cinnamon and burnt sugar. I'd leased it months ago, originally as a place to crash between long shifts, but slowly it had become mine in a way the family house never was. I took off my shoes, set my phone on the counter. The only message blinking was from Harper. Just a heart emoji and the words, "You good?" She never needed more than that. She'd been there the night my car broke down, the day the ER called about Dad's arrhythmia. She knew how many shifts I'd covered, how much I'd given. She also knew when not to ask questions. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, legs stretched out. The heater kicked in, low and steady and reliable. For once, I didn't have to brace myself for a call about a blown fuse or a missed bill. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I thought of the list I used to keep on my notes app. Every expense I covered just this once. Every loan I floated without interest. Every promise made in the form of "next time, we've got you." I deleted it without looking. I wasn't building a case anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to say we didn't know. They did, or they chose not to. Either way, it didn't matter now. The next morning, I called the power company, then the water service, then the internet provider. One by one, I removed my name from the accounts and gave them the new number to contact, Dad's cell. None of them argued. They just updated the records and moved on. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I didn't send a text to let them know. They'd notice when the screen went dark, when the heater stopped, when the tap ran dry. And maybe, just for a second, they'd pause long enough to wonder who'd been holding the line all this time. But probably not. By the third morning, I'd started opening the curtains before the sun fully rose. I liked the way the light came in, slow and gold, slipping through the lace in soft threads. The apartment didn't face much, just a brick wall with a stubborn vine crawling up its side. But it was mine. I began making coffee again. Real coffee, not the instant kind I used to gulp between errands. The smell curled into the corners of the room and stayed there like it belonged. I even bought creamer in a glass bottle, the kind that clinks gently against the fridge door when you reach for it. Harper came by on a Thursday night. She brought soup in a mason jar and a used book with a cracked spine. "Still breathing?" she asked, standing in the doorway. I nodded. She didn't pry, just kicked off her boots and settled in like she'd always had a spot there. She lit a candle without asking. Lavender and cedar. It mixed with the coffee and the quiet. Later, after she left, I stood by the window for a long time. And for once, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to change. It started with the mail. A letter arrived at my work address, forwarded from my old one. Handwritten. The envelope was cheap, soft around the edges. No return name, but I knew the handwriting. Mom's looping cursive, the kind she used for grocery lists and passive-aggressive notes left on the counter. She never called things what they were. The letter asked if I still had access to the utility accounts, said they were having some temporary delays in paying, blamed the new online system, Said it was frustrating, confusing, all those passwords. I didn't answer. A week later, Jordan texted. 3 words. Wi-Fi's been off. No hello, no question. Just a statement, like I was still on call, like my job was to fix things he broke or never learned to manage in the first place. I left it on read. Then came Harper's message. Your dad was at the hardware store, looked rough. I didn't ask how she knew it was him. She just did. The town wasn't big, and Gerald's face was hard to mistake, always red from the sun or frustration, probably both. Harper said he was arguing over a shutoff notice, trying to pay cash for something that needed an account number. Walked out empty-handed, muttering under his breath. She didn't say more. She didn't need to. I imagined the house at dusk. No porch light, no hallway glow. Mom lighting candles, not for ambiance, but because the breaker had tripped again and no one could figure it out. No hot water. No way to charge Jordan's phone. No fridge humming in the background. Just silence and spoiled milk. One night, I passed by the street. Just once. I didn't plan it. I was driving home from a late shift and the GPS took me that way. The living room was dark, but I saw flickers through the window, like someone was trying to charge a phone off a car battery or holding a flashlight just to see. I didn't stop, just kept driving until their house was gone in the rear-view mirror, smaller than I remembered, sagging a little more. The voicemail came the next morning. Dad's voice, tight and low. Not angry, but not steady either. We need to talk. Things got out of hand. Maybe we overreacted. Maybe you did too. He paused, like he was waiting for the right words to appear. They didn't. He hung up without saying goodbye. He never said the actual words. Never would. But he didn't need to. I knew what it cost to keep things from falling apart. And now, so did they. Another message came 2 days later, this time from Mom. Your father's been under a lot of stress. You know how he is. But you're still part of this family, okay? We're not perfect, but this isn't how it's supposed to be. Supposed to be. Like I'd broken a rule by stepping back. Like there was a script I hadn't followed. But I hadn't screamed. I hadn't burned bridges or sent angry emails. I'd just let the wires go slack. And they snapped under their own weight. At work, I overheard one of the interns talking about a neighborhood Facebook group. Apparently, someone in the suburbs was asking if anyone had extra space heaters. The family on Pine Ridge is struggling a bit, she said. Something about their daughter cutting them off. I didn't say anything, just kept walking. By Friday, they'd sent a card. No message inside, just a photo of the 3 of them at some church potluck, everyone smiling too wide. A family-shaped frame with one edge missing. They didn't ask me to come back, not directly. But beneath every silence was a hope I might. That someone would still show up with the solution, with the passwords, with the money, with the light. A week before Easter, a card arrived at my apartment. Pastel envelope, gold cursive on the front. The kind you buy in a 10-pack and keep in a drawer for when you forget someone's birthday. No return address, but I knew where it came from. Inside, the handwriting wasn't Mom's this time. It was Jordan's. Hope you'll swing by. We'll keep a plate for you. Ham, deviled eggs, that pie you like. No pressure, just family. Just family. As if that phrase hadn't already frayed down to nothing. He didn't mention the last dinner. The sentence Dad had dropped like a stone. He didn't ask how I was or what I needed, just ham and pie. I didn't answer. 3 days later, Harper called. She sounded hesitant. He came to my building. Jordan said he was just in the area. I stayed quiet. He asked if I'd talked to you, said things were complicated and that you're being too proud. That part landed harder than I expected. Jordan, the one I'd helped through panic attacks in high school, the one I sat up with through broken relationships and failed classes, now saw my silence as pride, my boundaries as ego. He said you're letting things fall apart just to prove a point, Harper added. I laughed, but it didn't sound like me. Letting things fall apart? I'd held them together longer than any of them knew, with duct tape, loan extensions, and sleep-deprived math. I didn't let anything fall. I just stopped bleeding to hold it up. The next day, I got a follow-up card. No writing this time, just a photo tucked inside. Jordan, Mom, Dad, posing beside an Easter table covered in pastel dishes and fresh flowers. A single plate left empty right at the center. Carefully placed, centered, photographed. 2 weeks later, the group text came. Sent to me, Harper, and 2 distant cousins I barely knew. No greeting, just a photo of Dad in a hospital bed, hooked to a heart monitor. The caption read, "Please keep him in your prayers. This family sticks together." I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't care, but because the sentence hung there like a rope that once held me hostage. This family sticks together, until it doesn't, until someone decides you're inconvenient. I didn't reply, didn't ask what happened or how serious it was. I'd played nurse before. This time, I folded laundry. That night, Harper called again. "You sure you're okay?" she asked. "You're allowed to feel things." I looked out the window at the brick wall, at the vine still climbing despite the cold. "I do," I said. "I just don't owe them anymore." There was no bitterness in my voice, no triumph, just air. She paused. "You ever think they'll get it?" I thought of the empty plate they'd set for me on Easter, how carefully it had been placed, centered, photographed. Maybe they believed that was enough. But I remembered the years I sat at that table and wasn't really there. The way they let me fade until silence was the only version of me they recognized. "I was part of this family," I said quietly. "They just lived easier when I disappeared." 3 months passed, then 4. Summer drifted in warm and slow. The bakery downstairs opened its patio, and the scent of coffee and burnt sugar returned to the hallway every morning. I grew basil on the windowsill. It wilted twice, then caught on. I started sleeping through the night without checking my phone. No missed calls. No half-sincere texts that really meant we need something again. I found small things to fix around the apartment. A sticky drawer, a squeaky hinge, the kind of work that held no emotional weight, no hidden demand. One afternoon in late June, I walked to the post office and mailed a small padded envelope. No return address, no note. Inside was the spare house key, the last one I still had. I slipped it between 2 pages of an old utilities ledger, the one with my name scrolled at the bottom in blue ink, circled 3 times like it had meant something once. I sealed the envelope and dropped it in the slot. It felt lighter than it should have. A few days later, I passed by their street again. Not on purpose, just out of habit. The porch light was flickering, a new bulb maybe, wrong wattage, too harsh, the kind that buzzes faintly and burns out quick. No one was outside, but taped to the door, just above the knob, was something small. My name, printed in block letters on a label I used to keep in the kitchen drawer for mailing packages. I didn't stop to read the rest. I didn't knock. I didn't take it down. I just turned away and walked back through the late summer heat, back toward the quiet hum of my apartment, the steady lamp in the corner, the basil leaves catching golden light on the sill. Behind me, the house stood still. Lights on. Nobody home. If you've ever disappeared in your own home, you don't have to explain it to anyone. You just know. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the one holding everything together while being treated like you were invisible, drop a comment below. Share your story. You're not alone. And if you want more real, raw stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away and let the truth catch up on its own. Thanks for listening.
The letter came on a Tuesday. Thick envelope. Official seal. From the bank. Inside, a balance notice for $560,000. Mortgage delinquent. Foreclosure threatened. Only one problem. I never bought a house. I sat in my kitchen, hands shaking, reading the fine print. My name. My SSN. My signature. Forged. For 2 hours, I thought I was losing my mind. Then I called the number at the bottom of the letter. A kind voice answered. "Ma'am, we confirmed your identity on the purchase back in July. The deed lists you as the primary owner." I asked for the address. It was 3 hours away. A luxury property with a pool, marble counters, and a 4-car garage. And I knew exactly who had done it. My sister had always been reckless. Always borrowing things that weren't hers. My clothes. My car. My credit card. Once, to book a vacation for a boyfriend she dumped mid-flight. But this was a different level. This was fraud. This was federal. I filed the police report the same day. The officer looked at me and asked, "Do you want to press charges?" My chest burned, not with hate, but with the weight of betrayal so deep. You feel it in your lungs when you breathe. I said yes. Quietly. Finally. Yes. And then I waited. I didn't scream. Didn't send her a warning. Didn't even hint. I waited until Sunday. Family dinner. Everyone at the table. My sister glowing in her designer dress, bragging about her real estate luck. Mom clapped. Dad laughed. She winked at me like nothing had happened. I didn't smile. I reached into my purse, pulled out the envelope, and slid it across the table. "Funny," I said. "You bought your dream house with my nightmare." She opened it, saw the police stamp, the charges, the mugshot still pending. Her face strained. Fork clattered. Silence. "You wouldn't," she whispered. I leaned back, calm as ever. "You already did. I'm just returning the favor." She stood up so fast the chair screeched, eyes wide, voice shaking. "You're going to ruin my life." I didn't blink. "No. You did that the moment you signed my name and put a mansion on my credit score." Mom reached for the papers like she could smooth them out, as if this was some spilled wine. Instead of first-degree identity theft. "Let's talk about this privately," she whispered. "We're family." I laughed. Low and sharp. Family doesn't take out a $560,000 loan, while their sister is paying off student debt and driving a 12-year-old car. My father, silent all dinner, finally spoke. "You don't need to involve the police." I turned to him. "You knew?" He looked away. That silence hit harder than anything. They knew. They let her. They let me carry their golden girl's recklessness again. I packed up my folder, tucked the papers neatly back into my bag, and looked around the table. You all thought I was too quiet, too focused, too boring to notice. You forgot I'm the one who checks the numbers. My sister reached out like that could fix it. "I'll pay it back. I promise." I shook my head. "With what? Your fake real estate job? The influencer career you built on lies?" The room felt frozen. The air thick with a decade of lies I had finally aired. "I wanted to believe," I said quietly, "that this family would protect me. Turns out I was just the signature they needed, when no one else trusted them." As I left, my sister collapsed into her chair, crying for the cameras that weren't there. But I didn't stop, didn't turn, didn't look back. That night, the detective called. We served her. She's facing felony fraud, and the DA's fast-tracking the case. She's not walking away from this one. I didn't smile, didn't gloat, because some victories don't feel good. They feel necessary, heavy, final. And this was just the beginning of her reckoning. The mugshot leaked by Thursday. She looked hollow. No filters. No lashes. Just a face stripped of entitlement, staring down a reality she never thought would catch up. It spread fast, shared in local groups, sent around real estate circles, retweeted with words like fraud, con artist. Using her sister's name, her agency dropped her within hours. The sponsorships vanished. My inbox filled with messages, some from mutuals, others from strangers. She used to act so above everyone. We always wondered how she afforded that place. She deserves every second of it. But the one that stuck came from an old teacher of ours. "You were always the quiet one." She was the loud star. But look who was building something real all along. And now, the real one, me, was cleaning up the wreckage of a house I never bought, never visited, and never wanted. Because the bank wasn't just walking away. They didn't care about family drama. They cared about money. And that mortgage? Still legally tied to me. So I met with a lawyer. Sharp suit. Sharper mind. He glanced over the police report and said, "We'll file for damages. Civil fraud. And we'll subpoena every cent she spent in your name.
Good.
Because I had receipts. Literal ones. The marble counters. The down payment. The $12,000 fridge that sparkled in her Instagram reels. All of it mine. Without my permission. That weekend, she called me from a block number.
Crying. Begging.
They're going to take the house. Mom won't help. Please, just tell them I had your consent. I stayed quiet for a moment, then asked one question. When you signed my name, were you thinking about me?
She stuttered. Paused.
Said nothing. I hung up because I didn't know her comfort, just because her consequences finally arrived.
She chose this.
And me? I chose freedom. The eviction notice went up on her front door the following week. Neighbors whispered. One even filmed it. Her yelling at the officers, screaming that it was all a misunderstanding. But the bank wasn't moved. They had evidence, a signed police report, and my name, notarized without me. She was given 72 hours to vacate. She used 71 to throw tantrums, and the last hour to disappear. Mom called the night before. Her voice was low, tired. She's scared, sweetheart. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive her? I closed my laptop. You're asking the wrong daughter for grace.
She sighed.
You don't know what it's like to lose everything. And there it was again. The expectation that I'd sacrifice myself just to keep their illusion alive. No, Mom, I said. I know exactly what it's like. Because I've spent 10 years losing pieces of myself just to keep you comfortable. Silence. Then, we didn't raise you to be so cold. I smiled bitterly.
No.
You raised me to be convenient.
Click.
The next morning, I drove past the house. Not out of pity, not out of revenge, but closure. The porch was littered with boxes. Fake designer bags. Framed prints of fake affirmations. A shattered mirror. And in the center of it all, her. No makeup. No filtered angles. Just a woman who built her castle on someone else's name and watched it sink into the mud. She saw my car, ran toward it, tears streaming, mascara smudged from what little she'd tried to hold together. Please just tell them I didn't mean it. I rolled the window down just enough. You meant it every time you signed my name, every time you smiled for the camera, knowing it was built on my identity. She cried harder, but I didn't flinch.
Didn't soften.
I don't need you to go to jail, I said. I just need you to finally live without me. Then I rolled the window up and drove off. For the first time in years, my hands didn't shake, my chest didn't ache, and my voice, it was mine again. By Monday, the calls started. Not from her, from them. Aunt Marie, Uncle Dennis, even Grandma, who once called me the quiet failure. She's your sister. Blood is thicker. She's learned her lesson. Do you really want her to go to jail? They didn't ask what she had done. They asked why I wasn't covering it up better. As if I was the stain. Not the forged documents. Not the six-figure fraud. Not the decade of silence while she burned bridges with my name on them. I said the same thing to each of them. I didn't ruin her life. I just refused to keep funding it. And the truth is, they weren't upset about the crime. They were upset someone finally pulled the curtain back. The golden daughter. The charming sister. The one they all liked better. She wasn't golden. She was glitter on rot. That week, my face showed up in a blog. One of her influencer friends wrote a pity post. When family betrays family, how jealousy ruins lives. They used my LinkedIn photo. No name, just enough breadcrumbs to make me the villain. The comments section burned. Until someone from college dropped a truth bomb. Actually, her sister stole her identity to buy a mansion. Bank statements and police reports say otherwise. Silence. Then deletion. It was almost funny. How fast people flipped once the lie didn't benefit them anymore. Meanwhile, the court date approached. My lawyer called. They're trying to offer a plea. Restitution, probation. I leaned back in my chair, staring out at the skyline I built. Every brick paid for in full. Every late night I never shared. Every dream I never asked anyone to believe in. Good.
I said.
I never wanted her behind bars. I just wanted her out of my life. I wasn't chasing pain. I was chasing peace. And peace means letting go. Not out of mercy, but because some people don't deserve permanent space in your story. And I was done writing her in. The courtroom was cold.
Not just the AC,
But the mood. The silence before something unfixable is spoken out loud. She walked in wearing beige. Hair tied back. No mascara. No fake designer labels. Just stripped down desperation. And the sudden realization that charm doesn't work on courtrooms. The judge read the charges. Felony identity theft. Mortgage fraud.
forgery.
My name echoed off the walls like a wound reopened. When they asked how she pled, she looked at me like I was supposed to save her. Again. Guilty, but I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I almost laughed, but I didn't. The prosecutor handed over the paper trail. Emails, applications, digital signatures, surveillance footage of her signing documents. Under my name, she started to cry. Real tears. Or rehearsed, who knows. The judge paused, asked if I wanted to speak. Victim impact. I stood. Not for revenge, but for record. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a decision made over and over. To use me without asking. To silence me with guilt. And to build a life on the bones of my credit. Her lawyer tried to object. The judge waved him off. I kept going. She didn't just steal my name. She stole years of trust. And when I confronted her, she begged for mercy. Not because she was sorry, but because she got caught. She's not the victim. She's the architect of her own collapse. The judge nodded. Sentencing postponed. But the damage was done. And this time, it wasn't mine. As I walked out, reporters waited. But I didn't stop.
Didn't give them the drama.
Because the truth? This wasn't a scandal. It was a severing. And I was finally free of the rope she'd used to pull herself up while dragging me down. 2 weeks passed. No calls. No texts. Just silence. The kind they used to weaponize. Now turned back on them. But silence was different now. It didn't hurt. It healed. I walked through my apartment barefoot. The sun was pouring in. Peace felt like warm hardwood under my toes. And coffee that didn't come with a crisis. Then the letter arrived. Handwritten. From my mother. Inside was a folded photo. Me and my sister at 10 years old. Matching dresses. 4 smiles. And beneath it a note. I raised 2 daughters. One just made more mistakes. Please come to the family dinner this Sunday. Let's talk like we used to. Like we used to? When I was funding everything behind the scenes. While being called selfish in public. When helping meant shutting up and opening my wallet. I placed the photo on the table. Stared at it for a long minute. Then dropped it in the shredder. Because I wasn't that girl anymore. Not the quiet one. Not the fixer. Not the disposable daughter. Later that day, a cousin called. They're planning some big apology. Dinner, speeches, even a gift. A gift, I said. They already gave me the best one. Distance. He laughed nervously. You're really not coming, huh? No, I said. They don't want to apologize. They want to reset without accountability. Well, what should I tell them? Tell them I'm thriving. And that they don't get access to it. That Sunday, while they poured wine and rehearsed hollow apologies, in a house I once helped keep from foreclosure, I was watching a play, surrounded by strangers who laughed without envy. And cried without shame. People who didn't need me to shrink, just to fit their spotlight. That night, I slept with the windows open. No buzzing guilt. No shame storms. Just wind.
And breath.
And a peace that sounded like finally choosing myself. It happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary sky. Nothing dramatic. Just the moment I finally realized they would never change. Not because they couldn't. Because they didn't want to. A final email came in from my sister's lawyer. She's agreed to pay restitution. If you sign a forgiveness statement. Forgiveness? As if a signature could erase the nights I couldn't sleep, the days I checked my credit score like a pulse, The job offers I lost while buried under her debt. I closed the email. Didn't even reply. Instead, I opened a different document. The title deed to my new home. Paid in full. In my name. Signed with a hand that no longer trembled. That night, I hosted a small dinner. For people. All chosen. No blood. No ghosts. We toasted over candlelight. Laughed without whispers. And when someone asked, "Do they ever try to reach out anymore?" I said, "Probably." But I stopped checking. They nodded. Because healing doesn't need an audience. It needs space. After dinner, I walked outside. No headlines. No courtroom. Just the stars, quiet witnesses. To a woman who finally stopped bleeding for people who called it love. I looked up and whispered, "I survived you. And then I outgrew you." There was no applause.
Just the sound of a door inside me.
Locking for good. And that's the thing they never understood. I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. And now, I have it. I am not her ATM. Not her scapegoat. Not their silent provider. I am Elena Carter. And I walk tall. With my own name. My own home. And no one left to apologize to. At my father's retirement dinner, he clinked his glass, raised it high, and said with that smug, politician-like smile he wore so well, "To my real children, the ones who made me proud." Everyone clapped. Cameras flashed. Champagne flowed. Then he turned, locked eyes with me like I was a stain on his perfect evening. "You can leave." That was it. No explanation. No shame. Just a death sentence spoken like a toast. I blinked. My body flushed hot, then cold. I stood, legs trembling, trying not to cry in front of my mother's pearls, my sister's Botox grin, my brother's gleaming wife. But then, my husband stood too. And what he did next, it silenced the room. My name is Leah. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because have you ever stood in a room full of family and felt like an uninvited guest at your own funeral? My father used to call me his little legacy. He'd tell stories of how I read law books before bedtime, how I argued with the TV during political debates. But when I turned down Harvard to marry a man he said was beneath us, I became nothing. And tonight, he made it official. I watched my husband calm, poised, reach into his blazer, and pull out the velvet blue folder I'd begged him not to bring. "Since you're making announcements, sir," he said, "let's make one more." He opened it. Inside, the deed. To the house. To the retirement fund. To the entire damn trust that I, not his precious other children, legally owned.
Gasps.
My brother dropped his fork. My sister's lips parted like a glitching doll. "This man you just kicked out your daughter for," my husband said. "He's living in a house your daughter bought. Every bite of your dinner tonight was paid for with her work, her sacrifice, her loyalty." My father's smile cracked. And then, my husband turned to me, gently pulled out my chair, and whispered, "You ready to go, Mrs. Blake?" I nodded. My heart was breaking. But this was the beginning of a reckoning. We didn't just walk out, we walked through fire. The room stayed frozen as we passed. My heels clicked on the marble floor like gunshots. My father stared, mouth slightly open, as if his retirement roast had turned into a courtroom and he'd just lost the case. Outside, the night air felt like freedom, cool, sharp, real. But inside me, a storm. I wanted to scream.
To cry.
To smash that champagne bottle over his fake mahogany table. Instead, I gripped my husband's hand. "Did I go too far?" he asked softly. I looked at him. My man, the only one in that room who never needed me to be perfect to love me. "No," I whispered. "You didn't go far enough." Because this wasn't just about one night. This was about every time he told people I was the disappointment. Every time he praised my siblings' store-bought successes while ignoring the empire I built from scratch. Every time he called me dramatic when I needed help. Every time I walked into a room and became wallpaper. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. Back at home, I opened my laptop. All the documents were ready. I'd been preparing for months. Bank transfers. Title changes. Scheduled revocations. Everything tied to my name, retirement homes, fund management, business shares. I had the power to pull it all. You see, what my father didn't realize was this. While he bragged about my siblings' jobs at law firms, I owned one. While he mocked my soft career, I was flipping companies in silence, writing checks that paid his bills. And I was done doing it quietly. I pressed send. Just one button. And like dominoes, the lights would start going out in his world. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted clarity. He needed to see what it was like to be erased. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from my mother. Missed calls from my brother. Emails titled please and emergency. But the best one? A voicemail from my father. Leah, what have you done? Call me. We need to talk. And just like that, the silence I'd been forced into for years was now his. I didn't call him back. Instead, I sat in my home office, the one no one in my family had ever seen, lit by the soft morning sun, and played his voicemail on loop. Leah, what have you done?
Call me.
We need to talk. Suddenly, he needed me. The same man who told me to leave in front of 50 guests like I was the help. I stared at the pause screen on my laptop. The trust transfer documents. The board member removal notices. The corporate filings that tied his financial lifeline to mine. I thought I'd feel guilty, but all I felt was peace. Until my phone rang again. It was my mother. I didn't answer. She texted. He's having chest pains. He's not well. Be the bigger person. Be the bigger person? Where was that advice when I cried on the bathroom floor after he told me marrying Aaron would ruin my pedigree? Where was that empathy when I offered him business help, and he laughed in my face because I didn't wear a suit and tie? Where was that grace when I asked him, just once, to say he was proud of me? That night, there was a knock at our gate. It was my sister, still in her cocktail dress from the dinner. Makeup smudged. Hair tangled. I watched her through the camera feed. She was pacing, talking to herself, clutching her phone like it might save her. I pressed the intercom. Yes. Leah, please. Let me in. What do you want? I didn't know. I didn't know it was your money. That it was all yours. Dad said he told us you didn't have anything. He said you were a lost cause. I bit my lip, staring at the monitor. Funny, I said. He always told me you were the future of the family. Silence. Then she whispered, We're losing the house, Leah. I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or maybe both. Because now they were finally feeling it. The loss. The weight. The unraveling. I buzzed the gate open. Not out of kindness, but because I wanted her to see what real power looked like up close. She stepped in slowly. Timid. Like I might attack her. I didn't. I simply said, You've been in his shadow your whole life. I built my own son. She sat on the edge of our velvet couch, like it might bite her. Gone was the smug, eye-rolling sister who once told me I'd wasted my brains on a man. Gone was the woman who paraded around our father's praise like a tiara. In her place was a girl, scared, cracked open, and suddenly small. Dad's having meetings, she said, voice shaking. He's trying to fix it. But everything's locked. The accounts. The assets. Even his condo's under review. He said you froze the holding company? I sipped my tea slowly. Not froze. Just redirected. Legally. My name was on everything, remember? He just never bothered to read the fine print. She blinked, stunned. I leaned in. You know the trust fund you used to shop at Saks every summer? That was me. The education account that paid for your grad school? Me. The corporate vehicle that let Dad buy that ridiculous boat. I tapped my chest. All. Me. She was quiet for a long time. Then, why didn't you ever say anything? I laughed softly. Would you have listened? Would he? The truth was, I stayed silent out of survival. I wanted love, not leverage. I thought if I gave enough, one day he'd look at me like I was enough. But betrayal teaches you to stop asking for crumbs and start baking your own damn bread. She looked down at her hands. I think he's scared. I've never seen him like this. Good, I said coldly. Let him sit in it. She looked up. Do you hate us? I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to the bookshelf and pulled down the framed photo of us. Me, her, and our brother. Taken when I was 13. I was in the middle, grinning, arms wrapped around them. We were kids, I said. But somewhere along the way, I became the enemy. She stood slowly, eyes wet. I was jealous of you, she admitted. You were always so sure of yourself. That hit me, because I was never sure. I was just loud enough to hide the breaking. She moved toward the door. I'm sorry, Leah. I didn't stop her. Not yet. Because this wasn't about apologies.
It was about consequence.
And tomorrow? It was my brother's turn to come knocking. He didn't knock.
He barged in.
Literally shoved the front door open like he owned the place, forgetting, of course, that I bought it. Leah, what the hell are you doing? No hello. No apology. Just rage dressed in entitlement. He stormed into the living room, eyes wild, suit wrinkled, like he hadn't slept. I stayed seated. Aaron stood behind me, arms crossed, silent, my shield without needing to say a word. You humiliated Dad, my brother snapped. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. He's paranoid you're trying to destroy him. I tilted my head. I'm not trying, I said calmly. I already did. He flinched, like he never expected me to admit it. You've always been cold, he hissed. Calculating. Dad said you were dangerous, and he was right. No, I said. What's dangerous is watching your family pretend you don't exist, and still funding their lives out of guilt.
He scoffed.
You want us to suffer? I stood, and I walked right up to him. I want you to remember, I said. Remember when I called you crying after Dad disowned me for marrying Aaron, and you told me to grow up? He looked away. Remember when I asked you to co-sign on Mom's hospital bill because Dad wouldn't, and you told me she wasn't your responsibility? He stayed quiet. Remember when I graduated early and nobody showed up? When I opened my own firm and not a single one of you said congratulations?
Still nothing.
Tell me again, I said, voice sharp now. Who made who suffer? He dropped onto the armchair like his legs gave out. You're really cutting us off, he whispered. Completely. I nodded. I gave you 15 years, I said. 15 years of paying bills, cleaning up messes, and begging for basic love in return. You gave me silence. He rubbed his face with both hands. What do we do now? I smiled faintly. Try living without me the way you pretended to for years. He looked up, eyes red now. You're serious. As death, I said. And for once, I saw it on his face, that flicker of realization that I wasn't just the sister in the background anymore. I was the reckoning. The one they raised to be silent, who chose to roar instead. They thought I was finished. But I hadn't even started. The next morning, my father's name hit the press. Front page headline on a business blog that used to worship him. Patterson legacy unravels. Family empire quietly built on daughter's fortune. The article didn't come from me. But I knew where the leak came from. People talk when their accounts freeze. When their private schools start sending warning emails. When their Amex cards decline at steakhouse dinners. My inbox lit up. Attorneys. Board members. Former colleagues. Most were in disbelief. Some tried to sympathize. A few congratulated me. But one email stopped me cold. Subject, I always knew. From my godmother. The only one in the family who ever truly saw me. You did what I always prayed you would. You didn't let their love define your worth. You built yourself in their absence. And now you're walking through them like fire. I'm proud of you, baby. I read it 3 times before I cried. Not out of sadness. But because for once someone said it, they were proud. Later that day, I got a call from the firm that managed our family's real estate holdings. The managing partner's voice was tight. Ms. Blake, your father's trying to liquidate assets that are under your authority. And we need direction.
Do we proceed?
I leaned back in my chair, the power palpable on my skin. Deny the liquidation, I said, and issue an audit on every transaction made in the last 5 years. If anything looks suspicious, flag it for federal review. Silence. Then a quiet understood.
It was surgical now.
I wasn't just cutting them off. I was dismantling the illusion they built without me. And yet, that night, I stood by my window, watching the lights of the city pulse below, and whispered a question only the dark could hear. Why did I have to burn it all to the ground just to be seen? Aaron came up behind me, wrapped his arms around my waist. You okay? He asked. I nodded, but my voice cracked anyway. I shouldn't have had to do this to prove I mattered. He pressed his forehead against mine. You didn't have to prove anything. They just couldn't handle your light. I closed my eyes and decided I wasn't done yet, because they hadn't said sorry. Not truly, but they would.
Soon.
The formal invitation came in a thick cream envelope, expensive, old-fashioned, like everything my father valued. Inside, emergency family meeting, Saturday, 6 p.m., Patterson Estate. No please, no signature, just expectation. Aaron raised an eyebrow. You going? I smiled. Oh, I'm not just going. I'm bringing the terms. Saturday arrived like a court date. I wore black, sleek, powerful, merciless. My hair pinned up. No jewelry. Just presents. When I walked into that house, my house, though they didn't know it yet, the air shifted. My mother stood first. Then my father. Then my brother and sister, quiet in the corner. All four of them looked like ghosts trying to rehearse humanity. Leah, my father said. Voice dry. Eyes smaller somehow. Dad. He gestured to the dining table. Let's talk. I didn't sit. I stayed standing. You want to talk? I said. Let's make this efficient. I placed a folder on the table. Inside, a list. Every asset I'd removed. Every trust I'd restructured. Every LLC I'd absorbed. Signed, stamped, notarized. Their silence roared louder than any insult they ever threw at me. Why, my mother finally whispered. We're your family. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insulting. Family doesn't cut you out in public. Family doesn't feed off you and pretend you're irrelevant. Family doesn't humiliate you at a dinner they used your money to host. My sister sobbed quietly. My brother's fists clenched. My father sat down, deflated. What do you want, Leah? He asked, not in anger, but defeat. I walked to the head of the table, his chair, and I sat. What I want, I said slowly, is for you to listen. And for the first time in my life, they did. I told them about the nights I cried myself to sleep after they mocked my choices, about the weight of carrying them in silence, about the bitterness of building wealth only to be branded a failure. I ended with this. I loved you all more than I ever loved myself.
And you used it.
But I've learned something. Love without respect is just self-harm. Silence. Then my father whispered. I didn't know. I thought I was protecting the family. You weren't, I said. You were protecting your ego. He nodded slowly. You were the strongest one all along. Finally, he saw me. But it was too late for reconciliation. Because this wasn't a plea for love. It was a declaration of sovereignty. The following week, I closed the final account with a click. The last shared holding. The last financial thread tying me to them. It was done. My attorney called. It's official, Leah. Everything's in your name now. They've signed. It's over. Over?
No.
It had just begun. Because the old version of me, the quiet one, the giver, the daughter who begged for crumbs, she was dead. In her place stood a woman who burned her bridges and used the ash to build her throne. That Saturday, Aaron and I hosted a charity gala. Not in secret, not in spite, but in full light. I wore white. My name was on the banner, the check, the foundation. And as I stepped onto that stage to speak, hundreds of eyes on me, I thought of that retirement dinner. That moment he told me to leave like I was nothing. Now I was the one raising a glass. To all the women who were told to shrink, to be quiet, to disappear. I hope you know, your silence is not your debt. Applause thundered. Aaron smiled proudly from the front row. After the event, as we walked to the car, I spotted a familiar silhouette by the fountain. My father, alone.
He looked smaller now.
Not physically, but spiritually. like something in him had finally cracked. "Leah," he said. I stopped, inches away.
Calm. Steady.
"I came to say," he swallowed, "I was wrong. About everything."
About you.
For a second, the child in me stirred, the one who still wanted his love. But I didn't come here to collect approval. I came to finish the story. "I know," I said, "but I don't need your apology." He blinked, caught off guard. I just needed to stop apologizing to myself. And I walked away. Not angry, not broken.
Free.
Because sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about revelation. Making them see the version of you they tried to erase standing tall, thriving, and untouchable.